Hi, this is your pack that you should have found in your pigeonhole. Just going to go through the contents of your pack. You should have some wet wipes, a palette, some tubes of the colours paint that you've chosen, a protractor and a pencil and a piece of chalk for drawing up your lines. Chalk's really useful and easy to get rid of with your Q-tips, which are also in here, so if there's lines that you want to erase. You should have a little mini easel and a prepared canvas. Some practice pieces of black card, and then your tool pack. So in the tool pack you'll find a selection of acrylic rods in different sizes that get progressively smaller or larger depending on what way you've got them around. You've also got some very small fine dotting tools. The green one is the larger of them and that goes smaller than the rods, and then the other ones, some of them are very similar in size but they're for doing tiny little dots which are good for a mini canvas. We've also got some cotton tips for cleaning up dots that don't quite go to plan. And you've got some little wooden sticks that might be useful if you need to get something out or get something off or cleaning up. So I ask that at the end of the activity, you might not quite finish today, but you can certainly take it home and finish it later. But when you are finished, can you please return all of the contents of the pack, except for your masterpiece on your canvas. And your practice paper if you've done some practice pieces on there. Return those back to me so that I can use them for lunchtime activities. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so now we're ready to have a look at some of the techniques. I just thought I'd let you know too that when you get your paints you might find that they've got a little seal on them. Just really carefully undo that, don't squeeze too hard or the paint will go everywhere. Should be more than enough paint in these tubes for what you're going to do. So I've popped some paints into a palette. You'll see some of them are really great, they come out really nice and smooth. Some of them come out a bit thick. I've actually mixed a little bit of white into that colour because it was a little bit too dark to see on the black. So you can use your stick just to mix some colour together. I don't know why some of the paints are thicker than others, it's just the way it is. You can actually get something called, a product called a pouring medium, and pouring medium thins the paint down to the consistency of pouring cream probably, and that's probably the right consistency for dot painting. If it's too thick you end up with really chunky dots that don't seem to dry very nicely, whereas when it's a nice consistency you end up with a nice dot that's got just a little bit of a peak, and then that dries flat once it's done. If you build up dots they generally will cover really well. So I'm just doing some dots. You'll notice that when I'm putting it down I'm not pushing it hard down, otherwise you might not get a nice consistent dot. And I'm just going to show you a couple of techniques that we use to do dot painting. You can do your dots, I think I said before, on anything. You can do them on little canvases, you can do them on objects, plant pots or bookmarks, all kinds of things. So you could make Christmas tags, all kinds of things, particularly in a little, in something small, doesn't take very long to do. The dotting tools that I've got, I found all of these online, so these acrylic ones are relatively cheap. These ones, I think they're actually used for cake decorating and things like that, so they use them to like work the fondant, and I've even seen ones that have got the balls like this but they're actually bigger, which are also really cool. You can use the ends of skewers or paintbrushes. It's just that the more consistent the end of your tool, the better and neater your dots are going to be and more consistent. So there's three main techniques. So the first technique is something called walking the dot. So I'm going to go to the small end and I'm just going to build up a row of dots. A bit hard for me to see because I've got a little light booth set up so that you can see, and I'm looking a bit sideways, so my dots go a bit sideways. It's because I'm looking sideways. I've decided very quickly in doing this that I couldn't be a YouTuber because it's really annoying. First 3 times I've done this, the camera, first time the battery ran out. Second time it just spontaneously stopped recording. So I've done multiple of these now in the pursuit of trying to get one to show you. So I've done a line of dots, bit wonky there, but such is life. Now I'm going to start walking the dots. So I'm going to call this the top, and on this next row I'm going to make the first couple of dots a little bit bigger. You can see by putting a little bit of extra paint, pushing it around a bit, and then I'm going to walk the dot without reloading the paint until the paint runs out. And go back and do the other side, start at the top and then walk the dot without reloading until the paint runs out. Now if it goes a bit yuck part way down, you can always go back and just really lightly press so that you get those nice small neat little dots. You'll find that you start varying the pressure that you put down, and you'll see that you can start to control how big or small your dots are after a while. I'm going to flip to the larger end now, and might do, so I'm going to go in between these 2 dots now, build up a slightly bigger dot, and then the one either side. Most patterns are symmetrical, so it helps to kind of keep things even as you go round. Oops. Like I said, some of these paints are better than others. Walk that dot around. It's kind of satisfying when it works nice. Not so satisfying when you do something that you don't like. That's why you've got the cotton tips, Q-tips, whatever you want to call them in there, so that if you make a mistake, just a damp cotton bud, you should be able to wipe off a dot that you've done. Won't work so well on paper, but it should work relatively well on the canvas once you've done it. Okay, so that's one pattern. You can do lots of different patterns using this walking the dot technique, just depends on what you want to do. So I'm going to go back to the small end, make sure that's still filming, and it is. And so this time I'm going to go to the top, make a slightly larger dot, and then I'm going to walk the dot until it gets small on the other side. And then I'm going to come down the bottom, make a larger dot, hopefully the same as the other one, and this time I'm going to walk it up until it runs out. Oh, that one went a bit wonky. It's probably not the best thing to do if you're a bit of a perfectionist like me. Anyway, I seem to enjoy working with the patterns anyway. So now I'm going to go a little bit larger on the next dot, and then walking the dot around. So I'm still using the small end, slightly larger dot, and then walking the dot around. Oops, just ran out there. What a pain. Light touch. Okay, on the next layer, so I'm moving to the larger ball this time. Start with that one. And then I'm going to start to walk that dot around, and on the other side. So you can do them in slightly different tones of one colour. That's what makes it into the cool mandalas, just by playing with different colour combinations, different patterns. Yeah, sky's the limit. No two will probably end up looking alike, and if you're anything like me, all of a sudden you start having all these cool mandalas everywhere, and then you have to start giving them away as presents because you have too many. So that's the same thing, but this time a different pattern, and you get quite a different effect. The other technique, just make sure that's still recording, and it is. So the other technique is a drag technique. So this time I'll do something a bit different. So I'm going to do some dots. That bang is just me pushing into the palette. Okay, so to do a drag technique, what you're going to do is you're going to put a dab of paint using the big end. I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to drag the paint out until it gets thinner. Just be careful that you don't leave a big line in it. So we'll do the other side now. So blob of paint. So I've got something to drag, turn it around, bit of paint there, and drag. These could be straight drags, or you could start to curve them depending on what you want to do. And they will create some slightly different effects. So I'll go for this colour. So blob of paint. Go for the small end. Oh, that one ran out a bit. So depending on how careful you are and how delicate you are, whether your hands shake, like mine start to do, you'll end up with some different effects. So I'm just going to drag that one across. So this one's the drag technique. I'm getting a bit of a curve on that one. Hopefully that's even. Hopefully it'll dry. Okay, yep, still filming. I might do one more on there. Let's put a purple in there. Oh yeah. Something very satisfying about putting down a colour and it works nice. Drag. Go back to the big end. Start with that dot. Go for the smaller end. Drag it around. Just fill it in. So yeah, that's quite a different technique. So you can see how patterns start to build up and develop. Oops, didn't clean off before I dipped. Slight curve on that one. That one there's just got a little bit that you can see through. I might do dots. Sorry for going quiet. Just get into a bit of a thinking mode. Actually, it's a non-thinking mode. Okay, I'm not sure if that camera just shut off again. So that was the original colour that stick that I used to do those dots. So I'm going to try and do a dot over the top of another one. It's always a good idea to make sure it's perfectly dry before you attempt to do it, but in the interests of not being here forever, I'm going to see if this is going to work. So I've put a different colour on here on a different stick and just very carefully gone over the top of it. And this is how you start to build up those crazy intricate dots. So let's grab that other one. Might be able to do one on top of that again. See how we go. So this is an even smaller one. You've got a really steady hand. Oh, it's pushing it. It's a bit wet. Yeah, probably need to leave it dry a little bit longer. But yeah, that's why you've got all the different size dotting tools so that you can put dots on top of dots. Oh, you can see that one didn't have enough paint on it, or it's dried a little bit. Oh, that's a bit yucky, a bit chunky. Go back to a colour that's going to be a bit more liquidy, and purple's working good. Trying to get it right in the centre. And you can always put them off to the side too, so you could put a bigger dot. So it's a nice big dot there. And you would normally let it dry for a lot longer, but you could offset your dots that you put on top. See how it's only printing half of it because it's too wet. Anyway, that's interesting. But you could actually do it so it was offset, so it's got a larger section and then a smaller bit, and then it gets closer together as it goes down. Anyway, go have some fun, and it'll be interesting to see what you come up with your designs.